some of the things that we can learn by way of general points from the Apology. One, the nature of Socratic method, and we'll come back later on in the course to think more about Socratic method and what it can teach us about our self-understanding. We're going to see, for example, that certain kinds of psychotherapy owe a great deal to Socratic method because they don't try to teach the patient something new, but rather they try to get the patient to dredge up from inside of him or herself things that are already there. So, for example, Sigmund Freud had things to say about the Socratic method and its implications for his therapeutic technique. First point. Second point, the idea of self-examination is not so much a matter of sitting and staring at your navel, somehow trying to introspect in some direct way and seeing what you can find. There's something to be said for that. You can find some things, but I think Socrates would say for the most part that's not a very effective way of achieving self-knowledge. Rather, a more effective way of achieving self-understanding might be to engage in conversation with others, to engage in discourse with others. You can find out what you think, you can find out about yourself by virtue of seeing what you would say in response to other people's thoughts, questions, challenges, replies, concerns. So the idea of self-knowledge as a kind of motionless, sitting on the top of a mountain, introspective, meditative thing may well have its limitations, and it's not something I want to suggest that would come very naturally to someone like Socrates. It may have a place, but it's not what we should take as the only form that an inquiry into self-understanding or self-knowledge could possibly take. It's going to be controversial what the best form is, or even if there is a best form, but I suspect Socrates would not take that to be his first choice, but rather his first choice would probably be something more like, let's learn about ourselves by engaging with others and seeing how things go. That's the second main point. The third point is Socrates, by virtue of his confidence about what will likely happen to him, or at least his willingness, his openness to the possibility of his surviving after his death by Hemlock, seems to be assuming something, presupposing something about the nature of what it is to be himself. At various points in his remarks among his friends and during the trial and so forth, Socrates suggests that he thinks that he himself, the person that is Socrates, is not identical with his body. He thinks it's quite possible that after his body is destroyed as a result of his drinking the hemlock, that he, that very guy, will survive in some sense and be able to meet other souls somewhere in Hades, is what the Greeks thought, and perhaps have conversations, discourses with Homer and Achilles and various other people, talk about how things are, talk about the most important things. Socrates believes, he believes it might well be possible. And regardless of his actual predictions about the alleged afterlife, the important thing for us is that Socrates takes himself, the self that is Socrates, to be distinct from the body that he inhabits, and as something that could quite possibly survive the destruction of his body. So one of our topics in the coming weeks is going to be this idea of what is the relationship between the self, of which an important part, or maybe the entire part, is the mind, and the body that we inhabit. And according to the Judeo-Christian tradition and the ancient Greek philosophical point of view kind of presaged that tradition. According to that tradition and the ancient Greek point of view, in some sense, I'm distinct from my body and could very well survive its destruction. So we're going to have to think about the nature of the self insofar as that self is not identical with my body or even my central nervous system. When we get many centuries later to looking at the works of René Descartes, we'll see a resounding articulation of this idea of dualism, according to which my self is not a physical thing at all, but some kind of substance that is not identical with any physical matter of any kind. So that dualistic point of view is going to be one of the things that we'll try to understand as we wrap our minds around the nature of self-knowledge. The question being, this self that I'm trying to know, what is it? Is it a physical thing or is it a non-physical thing? The dualistic point of view is going to be an answer to that question that says it's a non-physical thing. We'll try to understand that in the coming weeks as well.